Lisa could still hear the faint applause echoing from the studio as she paced back and forth inside the cramped green room, her heels clicking sharply against the tile. The bottled water in her hand trembled slightly, not from nerves, but from the sheer force of her restraint. She wasn't someone who lost her temper easily. Decades in Hollywood had taught her how to smile through awkward interviews, to nod politely when asked idiotic questions. But today was different. Her assistant hovered by the door, speaking softly, trying not to provoke further reaction. "You didn't do anything wrong," they said, offering another bottle. Lisa ignored it. Her mind was still running laps around the exchange that had just unfolded on live television. "It wasn't even about the question," Lisa muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "It was about how she asked it." The tone, the smugness, like she'd rehearsed the trap in her dressing room. Her phone buzzed relentlessly from where it lay face down on the table. Dozens of missed calls, a flood of text messages and social media notifications she didn't dare open. She needed a second, just one moment, to be a human being before the internet picked apart her every expression, every twitch of her eyebrow. Back in the control room, the energy had shifted from routine to damage control. Producers exchanged looks that said everything. One of them whispered under their breath, "That's going to go viral in under an hour." Another had already begun typing out a contingency PR plan for Joy's side of the story. Someone else was looping the footage again on one of the monitors, analyzing every second. "This one's not going away," a senior producer muttered, arms crossed tightly. "People love Lisa. This isn't some elected official or reality star. This is someone they grew up with." What had begun as just another celebrity guest spot on The View had quickly unraveled into something more potent. Lisa, beloved sitcom darling of the late 90s, was supposed to be an easy interview, a nostalgic moment, a ratings boost wrapped in warmth and applause. But Joy, ever the provocateur, had pushed too far, at least in Lisa's eyes, and the result was a tense, unfiltered clash that audiences were already screen recording. Lisa sat down finally, gripping the arms of the chair to steady herself. She wanted to make a moment, she said, not bothering to hide the bitterness anymore, and I gave it to her. Her assistant looked hesitant. "You didn't walk off, though. You stayed calm. That matters." Lisa let out a hollow laugh. "Yeah, I stayed calm, but it doesn't matter. Not when the clip's out there. She'll spin it as me being defensive. They'll say I couldn't take a tough question." The irony wasn't lost on her. Joy had always branded herself as the woman who asked the questions nobody else dared to. And sometimes that worked. Sometimes it made for good TV. But today, it had felt different. Lisa had expected wit, not warfare. Meanwhile, down the hall, Joy stood before a mirror in the makeup room, casually blotting her lipstick like she hadn't just poked a bear on live television. A junior producer lingered nearby, nervously holding a notepad. "Do you want to address it after the break?" they asked. Joy smirked. "I'll say she's welcome back anytime, but if she can't handle real questions, that's on her." There it was, the tone that made Joy a household name, a blend of biting humor and unapologetic self-assurance. But behind the facade, even she knew the storm was coming. She could feel it brewing online, unseen but undeniable. The public would take sides. They always did. Backstage, Lisa's phone buzzed again. This time it was her agent. "You okay?" they asked immediately. Lisa didn't answer right away. "Look, you don't have to say anything right now," her agent continued. "But when you do, take the high road, always. Don't swing back. Just be clear you believe in respect and dialogue. Let them decide who came across better." Lisa exhaled slowly. It was good advice, the kind she'd given herself for years. Still, a part of her wanted to unleash everything she'd been holding in. Not just about Joy, but the whole ecosystem that rewarded confrontation over conversation. She stayed quiet. Outside, the live audience applauded again as the next segment began without her. Her chair on stage now sat empty. Back in the control room, the producers were already split into two unspoken factions, those nervously trying to prevent fallout, and those quietly acknowledging that they might have just struck gold. Controversy was currency in daytime television, and this wasn't a manufactured one-liner or a petty disagreement over fashion. This had weight. Lisa's walk-off, emotional, subtle, dignified, was the kind of moment that lived on long after the cameras stopped rolling. The clips had already started to circulate. One edit was particularly brutal. It cut Joy's question, her half smile, and Lisa's frozen expression into a slow-motion montage, scored with a dramatic piano version of her old sitcom's theme song. Jesus, someone else muttered. No one laughed. It was happening fast, too fast, and the network wasn't ready. In a sleek office elsewhere in the building, an ABC executive was already texting another, "Monitor this. If Lisa goes public first, we may need to offer a platform to respond." It wasn't about sides. It never was. It was about control. Who got to shape the story first, and how loudly? Lisa, meanwhile, had left the building. She'd refused a car from the studio, opting instead to walk the block and a half to where her driver waited. She wore sunglasses and a calm expression, but inside her pulse still hammered. She didn't want to speak. She didn't want to perform composure. She slid into the back seat, shut the door, and finally picked up her phone. There were over 60 unread messages, some from old friends, some from numbers she didn't recognize but suspected were fellow celebrities or journalists fishing for comment. Her agent had texted twice since their call. "Remember what we said? Keep it above the noise. TMZ will probably find you tonight. Be ready." Lisa stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over her camera roll, tempted to record a video, just her, unscripted, but that felt reactive. That felt like giving in. Instead, she scrolled. One message caught her eye, a text from an actor she hadn't spoken to in years. "Saw the segment. You handled it with class. Don't let her bait you. That's all she knows." Lisa smiled faintly. The message shouldn't have meant much, but in that moment, it anchored her. Across town, Joy was doing her own brand of damage control. Or more accurately, damage management. She sat at the head of a small round table in a corner office of the studio, sipping from a large reusable cup filled with lemon water. A junior producer was explaining how the clip was being perceived. "People think you were too aggressive," they said cautiously. "They're calling it a setup." Joy raised an eyebrow. "Because I asked a real question. It's more about how you asked it." Joy rolled her eyes. "If I had flattered her and tossed softballs, everyone would have said I was pandering. I push. That's my job." The room was quiet. No one dared challenge her directly. Not yet. One of the newer producers finally spoke up. "She's not a politician. People have nostalgic ties to her. It's different." They gave Joy a moment's pause. She knew that part was true. Lisa was one of those faces, safe, warm, familiar. She hadn't been a controversial figure. She'd never courted attention or headlines. She was just liked, and that made this different from the usual blow-ups that came and went. Still, Joy wasn't built to walk back. Not quickly anyway. "I'll address it tomorrow," she said, leaning back. "Let's not overreact. The show does well when we're honest. We're not here to flatter celebrities." Back at Lisa's house in the Hollywood Hills, the lights were low and the television was off. She'd returned from dinner with close friends who, despite best intentions, had spent half the meal tiptoeing around the incident until Lisa finally said, "Yes, it happened. No, I don't want to relive it over the appetizers." Now alone, she stood by her floor-to-ceiling windows, glass of wine in hand, staring out at the city. She thought about the moments after the exchange, the tension in the air, the frozen smiles of the co-hosts, the uncomfortable transition to commercial. She remembered the sudden desire to disappear, to vanish from that set and never return. And yet, she also thought about what her agent had said, take the high road. Was she angry? Yes, still, but she knew how this business worked. She'd survived longer than most because she understood that public perception wasn't built on truth. It was built on tone. Her tone had been calm. Joy's had not. She opened her notes app and typed a few lines. "I've always believed in open, honest dialogue, but respect has to live in the room with you. If it doesn't, you have every right to leave." She didn't post it yet. Maybe she never would, but it helped just to write it. The next morning, TMZ got the shot they were hoping for. Lisa leaving a restaurant, smiling politely, hair immaculate, sunglasses on. When a reporter asked, "Would you ever go back on The View?" she paused, gave a practiced but genuine smile, and said, "Never say never. But respect is a two-way street." That line, delivered offhand, almost like an afterthought, landed like a grenade online. By noon, it was a headline on 4 entertainment blogs. By evening, it had been clipped and played on 3 major entertainment shows. TikTok creators mimed the phrase. Commentators dissected it. Twitter latched onto it. "Respect is a two-way street" became the unofficial slogan of the moment. And Joy watched it unfold from her own kitchen, the morning news still playing in the background. She chewed a piece of toast, eyes narrowed slightly, and then turned the volume up. There was Lisa, smiling softly on screen, that same line being replayed for the 3rd time in 2 minutes. Joy took a sip of her coffee, sighed, and muttered, Fine. So we're doing this. She didn't look angry, but she didn't look amused either. The story was no longer just a segment gone sideways. It was a media event, and both women knew they were in it now. The next episode of The View opened with energy that felt a little too forced. The hosts exchanged bright smiles, the audience clapped on cue, and the usual studio buzz returned. But a current of unease ran beneath it all. Joy opened the segment with a calm, practiced face, though her eyes flickered with something steelier. Before we dive into the headlines, she said, folding her hands on the table, I want to briefly address yesterday's show. The audience went quiet. The producers hadn't scripted this word for word, but they knew it was coming. Joy couldn't stay silent, not when the internet was calling her everything from the queen of real talk to a daytime bully. Lisa's a talented actress, Joy began measured, and she's always welcome here. We've had her on before and we'd have her again, but this show isn't fluff. We ask tough questions. That's what our viewers expect, and if you can't handle that, she gave a slight shrug, the kind that looked casual but cut deep. Maybe daytime TV just isn't your thing. The audience laughed, unsure whether they were allowed to. A few clapped. The rest of the hosts sat stiffly, forced smiles frozen in place. Social media exploded before the segment was even over. Clips went viral within the hour. Edits of Joy's comment were already paired with screenshots of Lisa's soft-spoken exit from the previous day. Lisa, class, Joy, chaos. One caption read, another simply said, yikes. She really doubled down, trended again, fiercer than before. Commentators weighed in across platforms, YouTubers posting 30-minute breakdowns of the body language during the exchange, podcast hosts debating what Joy really meant by can't handle, and lifestyle bloggers praising Lisa's restraint like it was a masterclass in PR. Some analysts framed it as a generational divide. Lisa, with her graceful restraint and non-combative posture, was being lauded as a symbol of old-school class, a woman who had seen the entertainment world change and still believed in personal dignity. Joy, on the other hand, represented the new media order, edgy, provocative, unapologetic. Others weren't so generous. A few conservative pundits weaponized the moment, painting Joy as emblematic of modern media hostility, while progressive voices accused Lisa of overreacting to a legitimate question. Even politicians started quoting the situation out of context to score points in completely unrelated arguments. For Lisa, watching it all unfold was like watching someone else's life get dissected. She had returned to her routine quietly. Early morning hikes in the canyon, lunch meetings, script readings, but none of it felt untouched. Every time she stepped outside, she felt eyes on her. The paparazzi weren't hounding her exactly, but they were watching, waiting. One wrong expression and it would be another meme. She hadn't posted on social media since the incident, not because she was hiding, but because she hadn't found anything worth saying. Every drafted note felt either too safe or too sharp, but what she had been doing was listening. Her inbox was flooded, not just with press requests, but with messages from fellow actors, producers, and even longtime fans. Some were short and supportive. Saw what happened. You were grace under fire. So proud of how you carried yourself. Others offered insight. Joy's whole career is about control. You disrupted that. Don't let anyone shame you for defending your dignity. One stood out more than the rest. It was from a retired showrunner Lisa had worked with nearly 15 years ago. They hadn't spoken in ages. They'll keep baiting you if you don't own your part of the story. Not with rage, with truth. Your voice is your power. She read that line again and again. Your voice is your power. Across town, Joy sat with her publicist and producer in a conference room, reading through the coverage. Her publicist looked concerned, though trying not to show it. The narrative's not in your favor, they said. Joy sipped her tea. It never is when a woman speaks directly. Sure, the publicist replied gently, but there's a difference between being direct and being dismissive. You called her soft. I didn't say soft. I said, you implied it. Joy didn't argue. Not really. She knew what she'd done, what she'd meant, but she also knew the game. If you spent your whole career dancing around people's feelings, you ended up saying nothing at all. Still, there was a sliver of regret, not for the question or even the tone, but for underestimating Lisa's impact. She hadn't expected the internet to love her so fiercely, and now Joy was the villain in a story she didn't intend to write. Back at ABC, the executives had scheduled a quiet internal meeting. The ratings were through the roof, well beyond beyond projections, but there was a cost. Lisa's absence from future guest lists would be noticed. Her circle was tight. Other high-profile guests might start to decline invites, not because they feared confrontation, but because they didn't want to be the next viral clip. "We can't afford a blacklist," one exec said flatly. Someone else added, "We need a resolution, even if it's just symbolic." So they sent an informal message through Lisa's agent, a proposed sit-down, a chance to clear the air, live if she wanted it. They even hinted at a special segment, more conversation than interview. Lisa read the offer, then she read it again. Her agent was on the line, optimistic. "They're giving you the floor," he said. "You could take back the narrative." But Lisa wasn't sure she wanted the narrative. Later that week, she met with a trusted friend and former co-star over lunch in Malibu. The ocean crashed softly in the background as they talked, far from camera lenses and digital noise. "You okay?" the friend asked, a little wary. Lisa nodded. "I think so." "Then why do you still look like you're carrying a whole network on your back?" Lisa laughed. "Because maybe I am." They sat in silence for a beat. "Let me ask you something," the friend said. "If you go back on the show, is it for you or for everyone else?" Lisa didn't answer right away. The truth was, she wasn't sure. If you liked this video, then subscribe.